Okay. That's not gonna work. I need to be able to get this one going. Dang it. Sorry, one quick second there. Oh, goodness. Oh. One quick second. 1 second. Still here. Okay. We'll see if everyone can move over. This is a lot of stuff being tested simultaneously. So the first being how to turn this down. I'm trying to get out of this chat. How do I get out? There we go. Wait. What? No. There we go. All right, so I need to cancel that other one on YouTube. Basically, I'm testing how to do multiple things here on YouTube, and there was an issue. How do I get rid of this? Manage? Okay. All right. I think we're good now. So what I was trying to do, this is the first time that we're streaming to YouTube, obviously. And the intention was when we do Revicon coming up next week, I want to stream to YouTube So I needed to do at least one time of doing a dry run through, which is great because this has been a big bungling mess so far. So apparently, because I use OBS Studio, but I upgraded it today. I knew that was a bad idea. I did it anyway because I thought I have hours ahead of time. It'll be fine. But so I think the issue wasn't so much that I upgraded. It's that this would be my first time streaming to YouTube live from OBS, not within YouTube itself. That I had an issue. Basically, I couldn't make my scheduled live go live. So I had to go make this new one to do that. So then I had to go and hustle and try to delete all the old links and post the new links so that people could get to the right one. And now here we are. So thankfully, this has just been a day. And I'm glad you guys are here. All right, so far, Maggie Weber's here and Woe's here. Thank you guys for being here. I realized since I haven't done a real stream in a while, my equipment was in place, but it had been bumped around, and like I moved the lights here around and stuff when I'm doing it just by myself. So I was trying to hustle and do that. And right before I started, I was airbrushing a bunch of different Haven stuff to get ready for the upcoming game on next Friday. So I was I had some Republic stuff like the Hunter, if you guys saw on Discord. I didn't get to that. It's still sitting in my print room waiting to be airbrushed. So hopefully I'll get to do that tomorrow. But we have the brand new Renatus here, all base coated. And I have the old one here, so that you guys, since you guys are here and you're special, get to see a comparison. So this is the old one. I'm trying to get at an angle so you can see the new Renatus is larger than the old one. This is a pretty significantly old print at this point. The paint job's not quite as good as what I can do now. So I wanted to get this one out just to kind of use as a comparison. We're going to end up painting the rest of, I won't get to all of it tonight, but we're going to paint the rest of my Haven forces for Orca up in my 7th Queen's Fury paint scheme. So I have a Renatus, I'm sorry, and the T-Ross here that I painted previously. Try to get those in focus. That I've painted previously. And we're going to use this guy as inspiration to kind of work off of. But yeah, we're going to get back into this paint scheme. So in this scheme, it's Army Green, it's from Army Painter, Vallejo Emerald, and then Army Painter Uniform Gray. Those are the three, primary colors here. So we'll just have him around. Yeah, the Renatus is the killer of big bags. And I know, Maggie, you've been using the you've been fighting the Vega Vega base, probably just easier to say it that way. That has the double TBMs. Oh yeah, if Kursala was here, I'm sure he would be encouraging me to just big brush, slap faster. So what is all this? So I have my recipe here for the Queen's Fury forces. I was trying to reference this really quick before I dove in with anything, but I've got all these colors here on the back. This must have been when I did like the Vega, because the Vegas had a lot of extra colors. I tried doing some different things because they had like lenses and stuff. But the T-Ross has a yellow light. I'm not seeing where I put the yellow down. Maybe I didn't. Well, thankfully we're not painting a T-Ross at the moment. Okie dokie. So obviously the Army Green is done. I have some extra here that's already thinned down and made up in case I do need it. But I have some Uniform Gray already mixed up so I could start working on, because I also use this color with my Blood Wolves. So how are you guys doing this evening? You know what? We can go ahead and do the uniform gray first. We just won't do too much of it. It only needs a little bit. Because the gray is more of just an accent to the secondary being the emerald. Don't really want to throw that off too greatly. Nice, nice. Welcome as well to Square Peg. Then painting a Land Raider. Nice. All right, where is my... Things have been kind of in disarray here on my painting table because I've been jumping from lots of different projects. Lots of different That felt great. Just kick that. That felt really great. I finished up all of that terrain, the Thunderhead terrain, which looks really cool. That was a lot of work. A lot of work. Then painted up some Core Republic stuff that you guys are going to get to see very soon. It was like 4 different Sierras. Then Mars. Another surprise. Oh, and then the Archer. Painted the Archer up, which is actually my very first Archer that I painted. So that was new for me. Exploring all the different panels and stuff and kind of making judgment calls of how I was going to do the red stripe on it. It was a cool project. And the Archer, I didn't really realize because I haven't really used a lot of them. And like I said, it's the first one I think that I've ever painted, which is weird. It's for a vehicle that's been around so long. I don't know why it's taken me this long to get around to it. Probably just because everything that's been happening in life, and now we're finally at a different spot. Oh, hey, Kursala's here. Start painting the feet. No, stop being weird. The feet don't get painted. They just stay green, and then I dry brush those later. See if pull down a touch of the light because I think it's making the green seem odd on the camera. What if I switch to a different? That made it worse. I think we'll leave it like that. It was kind of a mix between the two. I want a payment that says... Okay. So, if we go off of the T-Ross here, the gray's really only used ever on the top, and it's only used a little bit. So... Yeah, I probably should do the emerald first and then do the gray around it. Otherwise, I'm going to be upset with myself later. Should do it by the rules. If you want to have things duplicated. See how this emerald is. I haven't used this in a hot minute since I haven't... Oh, man. It's like... There we go. Painted shut. Let's see how this is. Welcome, big man on Kansas. It's possible. I am definitely open for doing a lot of different branded stuff. I only don't want to go overboard myself because I can do that pretty easy. Yeah, but whoa, you can, I mean, you can go and buy one shirt, right? All right. Well, have a good night, Chrysala. Talk to you later. It's very sticky on the bottom. Add a little bit more emerald paint to it. Wow. Whole cap of the dropper came right off. That's not a good sign. How is that even? Oh, jeez. Exploded in there. That would explain what happened. Yeah. Good. Now my fingers are already emerald. I just started. So who else is excited for Revicon next week? I myself am excited. I'm a little nervous because there's still a lot to do. I think everything, as long as we don't have the stuff that would be like out of my hands that makes me nervous is like the tech issues. Like if for whatever reason streaming isn't working that day on YouTube, it's like, well, then we have to pivot to like Twitch or Facebook. But like, you know, that I by nature am a worrier, so it's not necessarily like that's even realistic. It's just how my brain processes. Get a wall painted in silver house. Sorry, that sucks. So let's see. Let's do both of the knees. That'll be easy, so we can sort of copy a little bit of what the T-Ross had going. Okay, that sounds good. Well, and the benefit of it being like on YouTube is that it'll be able to be like cataloged a lot easier. I'm going to be attempting to also simultaneously record it so that it can be broken up into segments later, but we'll just as like a fail-safe of fail-safes, it would still be on YouTube. So, which is better for me, I think everybody else, as opposed to Twitch. And I'm hoping by starting to stream on YouTube, I have another wave of assembly videos that I'm starting to edit. There'll be more content coming to YouTube, you know, to build up that catalog of stuff to go back to. No, I don't darken it. I'll just thin it down and basically just use it as it is. So if it ends up getting lighter than I wanted, I just use a darker shade. Because what I don't want is I don't like mixing colors, which I know not everybody is like me, but because I want, if you guys are like, hey, what color did you use? I want to be able to tell you the exact color. So I don't like mixing, because then if I mix, you can't really easily replicate it. If you're a more experienced painter, maybe, but I'm trying to make it accessible for the average painter, right? So, like for example, I started using, where's it at? It's the Vallejo German gray. It's a really dark gray. It's what I wanted uniform gray to be from Army Painter, but so like this uniform gray to me seems like it should be dark enough, but for whatever reason, and then like this gray here, German gray from Vallejo, looks almost black in the bottle, but it dries a dark gray, while uniform gray dries like on the T-Ross here, like right here on this panel. So it's more of like a mid gray. So I had to end up just finding a gray that I liked. Instead of like, oh, well, I have uniform gray, let's add black to it to make it darker. And especially because I think it'll just complicate the system for me for trying to come back and do new units later to add to my forces. Like right now I'm adding, more Queen's Fury units. Those were all sorts of different. Might not work the way that I would want. I know to some painters it's probably like some of the YouTuber guys, like I feel like they probably mix their own stuff all the time. And probably if I painted as much as they did, maybe I'd feel a lot more comfortable about it, but currently that is not the case. Tricky. Yeah. Up. Oh, I just scratched the green right off there. Well, that'll get touched up later anyway. So let's see. So we did the legs, have a little bit on the side if we want. We could copy by doing this panel here. Go. So for those of you that are coming to Revicon, I'm curious, what is the thing that you're looking forward to the most? Probably good. I imagine the wash will get into those lines pretty well, so I don't need to go too crazy with that. I know for my side of things, with the Revicon coming up, I am there's a lot. I'd say what is the most? I think just being able to just have time and just talk about Revelations, which probably sounds kind of hokey, but I really enjoy being able to do it when I get to, like tonight. So I just kind of get to nerd out in a way. I feel like this one needs to be emerald. Yeah. Something in the paint. I know we're going to have a lot of different stuff during the convention to talk about. There's a lot of new stuff that's been being worked on, and some of it you guys know. Just if you're around in the community at all, you'll catch some of it. But it'll be a place to have like questions and answers, and as much as we can. Now, let's see, how are we gotta try to paint the other side of that strip in there. Trying not to touch anything else. I do have to sort of brag on the Sierra and the Renatus a little bit. Mostly the Sierra, because it's the same mech. We'll just say the Sierra. I'm very proud of how it turned out. And I think if you've painted any of the other Sierras before, I think you'll find that this one is a superior model. That it is worth the upgrade. Trying to decide what else to go with. We don't want to paint anything just for the sake of painting it either. Like, we want it to be purposeful. Well, this one has the antennas are black, so maybe I still want to do that. But let's see what to do. So we're going to paint these here. Has anyone had a chance to see? Let's see, what have I seen recently? John Wick or Transformers: Rise of the Beast? I've seen both of those recently. I didn't have a chance to see John Wick in the theaters, so my wife had picked it up for me when it came out recently, and so we watched it, and I really enjoyed John Wick, the first one. Second one was also really good. Third, I don't know, I started feeling like it was kind of losing its way in a sense. And then in the fourth one, I enjoyed the majority of it, but like overall, I heard some critique that it basically felt like a video game, and I would agree with that. Like the movies have always been unrealistic. I get that, but the first one felt very grounded. Like, he got hurt. He had to be careful how many guys he would fight at one time. He had to reload a whole lot. Like, there was a lot to that. The second one still felt a lot like that, but it was a little bit more of a stretch. And then by the time 3 started, you're like, okay, how is he alive after some of the stuff? And then the fourth one, I started really feeling like, how is he still fighting? There's just so much stuff that happens that it feels like if it's supposed to be grounded, he would be just messed up, right? You'd have to change what some of the injuries are. And if it's supposed to be like a video game, I would believe it because he would just like heal in between fights. And that, like, if there was a video game of John Wick, I would assume it was a lot like the fourth movie. Which is sort of weird to say. I guess, in a way. I guess, like, I know they've already announced that they're working on a fifth, which I will still watch. I didn't dislike 4 so much that I don't want anything else to do with it. It's just some of the stuff, I don't want to spoil anything, but some of the stuff in 3 that they made such a big deal of, then in 4 he's just doing some of the stuff and you're like, well, but you made such a big deal in 3, why isn't it still a big deal? And it was, I don't mind things being too crazy necessarily if it's done well, but I really like it better when whatever the IP is you following its own rules, right? Like, you wouldn't want WarMechs behaving one particular way in one book, and then the next book, like, you wouldn't want them to go from, oh, all the WarMechs feel a lot like Titanfall or BattleTech, and then in the next one you're like, why do these all feel like Gundams, like, or Megazords or something crazy different, where you're like, these feel so jarringly different from each other. Like, why? Like, are they from the same author or the same universe? So that's always a bigger pet peeve of mine, is that, like, whatever you establish as your rules, if I enjoy them for your universe, great. Now that we've established the rules, this is how I'm expecting things to kind of stay. Or if they change, they have a good reason for changing, and, like, I'm okay with there being some growth. I don't want everything to stay the exact same just because, well, that's what's been done before. Just make it fit with things. We're getting some variation starting here, right? It might be worth, no, because I feel like that's, yeah, I do that with the Blood Wolves. I don't want to do that here. I think we're pretty much done with the emerald here. I'm kind of tempted to try to paint the ring right around the hatch. But I'm not sure if that's kind of crazy, but I think I'm going to go for it anyway. Nah. Now, this is the harder part. I saw something to make sure it's not, oh, okay. Making sure there wasn't a tech issue with the stream and someone's trying to message me. Hey, it's broke. Need to fix it. think I'm gonna have to go grab one of the Vegas I painted and bring that over here too. I think that works. Just gives it a little bit more of a variation, breaks it up, so it doesn't end up feeling too much of emerald. I'll be right back. My cabinet's right over here. I'll just grab that Vega real quick. Uh-oh. So if I use the Vega as a reference, last time I painted this gray. So now I've already done that emerald. Whatever. But I did do the back of it black, so that'll be good to know because I wasn't sure what I did there. And the missiles, I'm hoping... So it's probably this dragon red was the missile underneath. Then I did the wash. Then it looks like I may have done bloody red. Yeah. So we'll try that. See how that looks. Set the Vega up over here so he doesn't get broken, because that would be devastating. So let's switch to the uniform gray for a bit so that I don't end up doing too much as emerald. I don't want to overdo it. So let's get the uniform gray mixed back up. These little, I got these little glass jars, I think. Yeah, I got them from Hobby Lobby. They sell them in 6-packs. They were like $4 or something. They were really cheap. And they're little glass pots. And they're really great because I thin my paints down so much from either like, so I can use them in an airbrush, or I also thin down my paints, which you're supposed to, but I thin them down for painting the models themselves, that it helps a lot to be able to have pre-made pots or a place to be able to mix them before they put them into the airbrush. Although basically I get them to the consistency that I want for painting right onto the models, and then I normally would take the same mixture that I had. First in my airbrush I would add more airbrush thinner, then mix in this, and then mix it together, so then that way it's really thinned down to spray a lot easier. Okay, so let's start doing the gray. You can do something like this round area here. This gray. All right. And we need something. Oh, It's gray. That's something we could do. Do these panels down here. Right. Hopefully the music isn't putting anybody to sleep because the chat's been pretty quiet. I'm gonna start making myself nervous. I made everyone pass out. Let's do this. We need some other gray here. I don't normally do any gray onto the legs for the Queen's Fury stuff, but we need some other places, and I don't want to just be shoving colors to shove colors, you know? Try to do something that feels natural. Bump that. I think I'm gonna switch the song to something a little bit more upbeat, even for myself. Oh, hold on a second. What's up with that? Oh my goodness, my chat's frozen. That's why. I looked over on my computer and I can see that people are... Oh, the whole... Wait, that's weird. Like, the video looked like it was working. What happened? YouTube just like crashed or something. That's why I was like, man, the chat's been super quiet. There's people in here. Oh my goodness, there's so much. Okay, so Maggie, thank you for the comment on the redesign of the back. Yes, thank you. Looking forward to hearing about Lasonia and Ethereal. New Sierra will be dope, yes. Lasonia is going to be super cool. I'm looking forward to being able to talk about that on Friday. See all the new mech. Oh, yeah. The Arbalist. Yeah. It's a Primaris Renatus. Yeah. Hi, Dallas. If you're still here, bye, Dallas. Purple Planet. All right, there we go. Now I'm catching up to the comments. Like to imagine that John really was the boogeyman. He just locked it up for so long with. That would be something if they were like, no, like the whole time he was some sort of Grim Reaper, so to speak, which is why he couldn't stay happy with his wife, right? Like things had to go bad. That would be an interesting. At this point, it would feel really shoved in there, but it would have been a really interesting thing to kind of play out as things kept going. That's actually kind of... That actually would be a weird twist. So Purple Planet Media asks, what colors are you painting on that WarMech? So I'm doing... now that I've caught up, my goodness, now I'll know that I have to be aware of that. See? And that's why we're doing this run-through. So for the Renatus, we're doing Army Painter, Army Green. The gray is Army Painter Uniform Gray. Then the other color here is Vallejo Emerald. So that's the primary colors. Well, then we'll still use black. We'll end up using a gunmetal, and we'll do some red shade in the for the missile tips. Well, I think, in my opinion, Maggie Weber, if you're still interested in John Wick, I think 2 is definitely worth watching. It definitely felt like a solid sequel. And if you really enjoy John Wick by the end of 2, 3 and 4 really aren't bad. They're just not, they don't feel as great as they could have. But, I mean, you do have to, and it's just kind of like sequel syndrome. You have to go bigger. You have to do better than what you did last time. You know, it's like, for Marvel, it's like now that they've defeated Thanos, like what other threat could possibly feel like on the level of Thanos, right? Who could do that? Short of, okay, the last guy wanted to blow up half the universe. This next guy wants to blow up the whole universe. Okay, he's twice as bad as Thanos. That's any other bad guy is just kind of like more low-level villain, which is still fine because there still would be low-level villains still trying to, you know, destroy New York or attack London or blow something up in Japan. Like they could be all over the place. That doesn't change their level of threat. Just for the audience, seeing like Spider-Man be part of, you know, fighting Thanos to then fighting just common thugs just doesn't feel like you kept going so high that's like, now what? Everything else feels low. Have a light blue? Well, that's actually, originally, that was the color scheme. Was going to be like the army green and then like this light sky blue. So this was done several years ago. This was when Orca was still very fresh. And man, I look at this and I'm like, man, this is, it's such an old model now. Oh yeah, for sure. A good villain does really impact the story. Huge, huge, huge. But it's, I think most people are like, okay, we did the big thing, so like maybe it should just end, because like what else could we possibly do to impress anybody, kind of thing. So I think like in John Wick, they kind of did the same thing. You can't have him just doing more like basics, fighting like basic guys without there being like more and more and more of them every time in every movie. And now we have to level up their tech to kind of match his own, and they have to match his skills. So now he's fighting like, you know, other John Wicks kind of character. You know, it's, and there's always the idea of, and it's always just up to personal preference. Like, at what point is the story finished? At what point don't do sequels? Like, it needs to be done. Like, you could do sideways stories. Like, I know that they're working on a character. I think the movie is going to be called, or is it? It's a show about the ballerina that you see in John Wick 3, which obviously she must be an assassin ballerina because she's in John Wick. So of course she is, which I'm willing to, because I like the universe enough, I'm willing to check that out. But at some point, you know, it'll be like, okay, we've done what we can without feeling like we've jumped the shark fully. Like, you want to leave it where people want more, not where it's been going on too long. And I've thought about that for Revelations. Like, at what point, and then we're still years and years and years away, but like, at what point is it like, okay, there's enough here, like, don't keep touching this? And that'll probably come after video games and movies and other stuff that I want to do. But as a creator, I think about that sometimes of like, will I know that it's done, or will I always be like, well, we could do this, we could do that, and then like it just keeps going and it loses its zest. Yeah, that was my thoughts too. Whoa. Now I saw, I don't want to spoil it either because it just came out, the Rise of the Beast movie, and I didn't have very high expectations going into that. And I found myself actually enjoying it. By the time it was over, yes, the problem with Transformers as a whole, they can't keep their continuity in check, and it's like they have to sort of reboot things, and really to appreciate the Beasts characters, you really should watch Beast Wars as a show, which I happen to have watched within the last year because I got to introduce it to my two older boys. So like that's still fresher in my mind, so I enjoyed that. But I think probably the casual viewer will probably be like, yeah, it's okay, but it won't have the same impact for them. Well, and I would see that would be the, you're right. I think that is the difference between something like John Wick, where John Wick is very, there's only so many places you can pull before, like they're making a show to talk about how Winston became in charge of the Continental. That could be interesting if done well. But okay, then we explore Winston, we explore this ballerina character. Like, so many of the characters die in the movies that there isn't that many to take and be like, okay, let's expand on this person. What else did they accomplish in life and stuff, right? Like, they're just, well, they were here and they died, so they weren't really that interesting to give them a whole their own movie. But I do hope, and I'm glad that someone else sees it, I know others here probably do as well, that Revelations has the potential to go on for a long time. And there's, you know, like the stuff I've been doing right now, it's basically would be considered to like building the Avengers, right? Like you're introducing characters and events. Instead of like rushing into, you know, the Justice League or the Avengers movie itself, you're kind of doing the build up so people appreciate, or they have the potential to appreciate the different characters that are going to be involved. Is that the right strategy? Don't know. But it's the one I'm going with. The intent would be like when it comes time for the big event, that it does a good enough job introducing people to those characters that are in that cast well enough that you can appreciate what's going on without having to feel like, oh, I got to go read 13 other books first before I understand this. Like, you wouldn't want that. Go. One thruster down. And then I touched it. So it's not done. Whoops. Set my finger right on top of it. I've been trying to decide like how much research to do and stuff for Kingdom of Sand, because I know what I want to accomplish with that series better now than what I did before. So I have there'll be quite a bit of Kingdom of Sand to still go and to explore stuff with Mikhail. Oh man, that wasn't supposed to be touched. Funny enough, I kind of do have a character that was inspired in part. I combined a couple of characters, but by John Wick, which was in Spectre. That was definitely, I think if you if you walk away from the conversation knowing that I really like John Wick, and then you read that book, I think you'll be like, okay, yeah, I can see where it drew inspiration. It's not at all as crazy per se, but there's definitely, if you look at like the first movie especially. But Kingdom of Sand, there'll be some stuff to discuss next Friday. I would have liked to have gotten a lot farther or done a lot more writing. I've been so focused on painting in my available time or planning things that writing has just been, it's been tough. I've developed bad habits around writing, and it's my own darn fault. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. See, the vices can be fun. There's still a lot to do with them. They're gonna... And there's still more vices to introduce. Yeah, because I know you've been kind of out of things. So I had an idea for what I wanted to accomplish with Kingdom of Sand when I started it. And we just weren't able to, I wasn't able to pull off exactly what I wanted to do. And then I started getting in my own head of doubting where it was going and everything. So I've taken them down. I'm gonna update them, mainly books 2 and 3, and then be able to move forward into 4 and beyond. Because Kingdom of Sand is going to end up being, it's like the match that starts a lot of the other things. It gets a lot of other stuff rolling. So the whole series isn't just about, really, at the end of the day, it's not really just about Mikhail. It's about a lot of other events that are going on, or events that start because of decisions that he's made. So he ends up being, his journey is very impactful. Oops. I'm a much bigger fan of this whole thruster pack versus the old Sierra's version, which... So for those who don't know, this is the old one. This is the one that's coming out in July. You can tell the thruster pack is totally different. It's much better now. Kingdom of Sand comes somewhere around 20 cycles, 20 years after Rise of the Inquisitor. And Spectre is before Rise of the Inquisitor. I wasn't sure how, like when I first started writing, I wasn't really sure if doing things with like large gaps was the way to go in time. But I think it kind of sets things up to feel a little more natural, where there are gaps, and then once everyone kind of gets to like 434, like that's like current year kind of idea. So like Kingdom of Sand is like current, effectively. Eventually there'll be stories past Kingdom of Sand in the timeline, but they'll still, for the time being, be within like the 434, 435 kind of thing, because of the stuff happening in Kingdom of Sand will kick stuff off elsewhere. I know one thing we need to find is we need to find a solid illustrator. I've come up with an idea for the artwork for the series. So I need to find a skilled enough illustrator to be able to help do that, because the other illustrators that I've had that have done like the book covers or the really, really high quality artwork that we have no longer work for us. The last guy, he had stuff come up family wise he had to take care of. So I've been I'm going to have to get out there and find somebody. But it's one of those, like, I don't want to do it because it takes a lot of time to find somebody, but it's necessary because you have to have book covers. And we really have to update the ones that we have for Kingdom of Sand anyway. Like the mechs don't look like that anymore. Like that art was made prior to certain mechs even having decent artwork for them. And it was definitely before the models were made. So now we know like what the Arbalest looks like, and it doesn't look like the mech that's on the second book cover. Or, I'm sorry, the third book cover. Heck, even the Sierra and the Spade look way different. Now I'm gonna be all nervous that the chat's gonna get frozen again. There we go. Let's do the antenna now, so we can match up with the T-Rosses. I guess we can leave that. That just turns out to be one of our happy little accidents that end up making it look right. Just a little bit of green there showing. There we go. Keep it in focus, Graham! I'm gonna try to check the stream real quick on my phone. There's something else to use. Okay, we're still current. I think the last black that we need to do is just the tip of the laser repeater. Sweet. Just a little bit. Just the tippy tip. And since I have some of the black mixed up, we'll just work on some of these other guys really quick. We'll just do this, because we already know we're going to do the antennas anyway for this T-Ross. This is the laser variant that's going to be coming out. It'll be discussed also during Revicon. Yeah. Let's do... I was going to mess that up, but I didn't. Okay. So I did paint those also. For the Vega. Hey, Final Consensus, how are you doing? This is some soundtrack for a game called Phantom Brigade. I figured it would be something that would be relatively safe to play. So far I haven't had any issues with YouTube. It's so hard to know sometimes of what's going to get you flagged or You don't want to get in trouble with YouTube. You want to follow the rules, you know. I think that'll be all right. Let's do this one now. Everything's still... I think it's still in focus. I'm much more comfortable now painting on stream than I used to be, but it's still different. It's not quite as bad as like eating with your offhand, with your weak hand, but it's not too far off, honestly. Because I want to hold it a lot closer. Not like a lot, but enough that it wouldn't be interesting for the stream. As much as watching somebody else paint is. If you mess up, we'll never forgive you. Yeah. I definitely won't to myself. I'll be upset. You printed this, you cleaned it, you base coated it just to mess it up in front of everybody. Now, usually there's stuff you can do. You can fix a lot of it. If not, you just blend it into something to look like you meant to do that. Well, thank you, Purple. Yeah, I'm trying. I was streaming fairly regularly on Twitch, but it didn't feel like anything was like growing or happening, so I kind of just like, maybe people aren't really interested, so I'll just stop. But I don't mind, I definitely don't mind hanging out with everybody. It's more of like if nobody wants to do it, then I can still paint. I don't have to do it here. You know what I mean? So, and I was only doing painting streams because things aren't really at the point yet to do anything else. I guess we could do gameplay, but I don't have anyone here where I live that can be on camera consistently. But we could do the automated system, because I can do those. It's kind of why it was made, is to be able to play on your own, or with a friend, but you can at least play on your own. Exactly, yeah, you can cover it up with battle damage, which ends up sometimes happening anyway. So that ends up being fine. So, anything else I need to worry about? I don't think so. Oh, the back of the missiles. Do that easy enough. Wait, was it the whole thing? It was, okay. Well, with the automated system, I mean, you're playing on your own, but you're playing with the game makes its own, for lack of a better word, its own choices. You still have to move the models for the game because obviously it's not alive, it's not a real player. But there's a way that it's using a deck, and the deck tells you like what actions to take. And if you run into a situation where you're like, well, I don't know which one it would do out of these two, you know, as the controlling person, the game master, you can just decide, oh, it would do this. That makes sense. Okay, sure, do that. But at least it gives the impression that you're playing against another person because it's doing its own things. Not quite like playing a computer game by yourself or something, but it happens. Oh yeah, especially those things are. Actually, we're going to be doing when we do Revicon next week. I have someone coming over, but I didn't put it in the agenda. But it's actually going to be an automated battle. So everyone will get a chance to kind of see how the engine works. Anyway, because it'll be being used. So this is another T-Ross that's coming out. This one, if you don't know, is a missile variant. So it has these missiles and then these ones with the pointy tip. Because normally it's just that's boxes where the missiles are. So this is a different type of launcher. And then it has a anti-missile system and a grenade launcher. Smoke grenades. This is another new model coming for Orca's forces. Yeah, it's a cool smaller mech. Here we go. Yeah, so there's a lot of new models for anybody who's been kind of like away for a little bit. There's a bunch of new stuff that's coming out that we're going to be talking about at Revicon. More lore that's coming, more I don't want to spoil anything else. There's some other big stuff. It's quite a bit actually of stuff. I'm downplaying it quite a bit, but no, actually, that's the Faust Union is the newest faction. We added the Faust Union in April. They came out. So with Orca and the Mercenaries, we're now up to 5 playable factions. 4 if you count like unique models, because so it's Core Republic, Union of Stars, Orca, and then which this is because Orca's made up of sub factions. This is specifically Haven, but you can use it as an Orca player. And then the Faust Union, and then Mercs are, you know, they just use everybody else's stuff, so they can be really anybody. Five factions now, so it's not a small thing, you know. Coming up on for the game, it's 3-year anniversary. I mean, we're not where I'd like to be community size wise and player size and everything, but there are other games made by much, much larger companies that didn't even last 3 years. So it's not a nothing event kind of thing. Like I am proud of it. Yes, I would like things to be different, but no one will be able to say that we haven't stuck with it. 3 years isn't as big as like 10 or 5 and everything, but it's still a sizable accomplishment that is just a hard fact, right? Like no one can say, well, you didn't do it for 3. No, we've been here right through COVID. Still ticking. Oh yeah, we've done a lot since the the initial Kickstarter. And there's still a lot more to go. We still have room, obviously, for the other 6 major nations, sub factions like the Keepers of Peace, space pirates, a variety of mercenary units. Like Blood Wolves is a specific sub faction, but you can play them as a merc player. The Explorium, some sub factions that don't even exist yet. We haven't even gotten to them. But no, there is a lot of room to go. Lots of artwork, lots of characters, lots of stories, models that don't exist yet. Not even counting getting into like spaceships and, you know, everything else there. Let's do one of these drones for a little bit. I'm trying to use up this black. I don't want to toss it. I have a problem about like throwing away paint. I really don't like to do it. I guess it's a good thing, right? You don't just want to be wasteful for the sake of being wasteful. Got to make that budget stretch so that we can do all the other stuff that's planned. Is there a database where I can see all the different mechs and classes? The only thing at the moment is showing them the store, shoprevelations.com. That's the only way to see all of that. We are going to get... I have somebody doing line art for me right now for models that we already have, that he's supposed to be creating artwork for 20 different models that we have currently. So we will have a whole other huge wave of art coming, just like the black and white line art. And then with that, it gets just about all the models that we have left. So I know I would like to create something for people to be able to explore of like, okay, what are all the different mechs and everything. And I've had people in the past ask me for like something like a technical readout like they do for games like Battletech. And I've just been like, I don't know if there was interest for it. So I kind of had hesitated on making it. But if there's genuinely interest, I want to create stuff that people want. Long story short, not yet, but if people would like there to be, we can make one. I've been really trying to be more mindful of what are things that help new people get into stuff or get into this. So one of the things that I'm focusing really heavily on is showcasing starter kits for the game. So the upcoming, I can tell you guys, not anything. It's not really a secret. I've kind of already announced it at different phases anyway, of making it starter kits for everybody, for all the factions. And and then having like proper photographs for those and being able to really promote the game as being a lot more accessible. And then obviously another component of that is making sure that there is easy lore to grasp. Like I've created starter pages effectively on the store. I'm just kind of keeping everything on the store at the moment because I can add pages there and stuff, and then as things grow and I have someone to help, we can expand to its own, let's say, like lore website. Newcomers. So you get a nice looking short read up of the mechs. Yeah, nothing too complicated, right? Yeah, and I want to have that available for everybody. But it's been like, do you focus on it from the angle of lore, or do you focus it on angle of like physical product, from coming at it from the angle of the game? And that's where I've been kind of torn, because I don't want to make everything about the game, because really the game is to get people excited to read the lore and the books and stuff and everything else that comes down the road. So, but the game is how I've been able to get so much created, so you can actually start to see the universe more. So it's kind of, they go together, but they don't have to. I need to just make it a priority to kind of make it more accessible for those who are interested in Revelations, but not in playing the game. Like, they just want the story side. Yeah, the starter kits are going to be really cool, especially because the mindset is, I've tried to make things very price conscious for people, so they can, people, their STLs are out there, so you can 3D print it yourself if you have that capability or desire, or you can buy them printed from us. And the starter kits will be, I don't have the exact number yet because I've been trying to get all 4 of them assembled so I can run the proper math of how much they'll be. But I'm trying to make them accessible. But especially in light of other games like Warhammer going up, Star Wars Shatterpoint, I think, like, to get into the game is $160. Like, they're not insane prices, but it feels insane, and like inflation is just wrecking stuff. But so far, resin has stayed the same price, so there's not really a reason to jump and be like, yeah, every starter kit's going to be $80 and you get 4 models in it. Like, it's that would just be, that would be nuts. But I feel like that's where the industry's getting. Something the rulebook talks about the lore to grab people's attention about it. Well, and yes, and that I'm going to be adding some of that into the starter, but we also do have the primer, and I do have links to the primer in the starter rules, or in the core rulebook, to try to get people to download the primer, which is free, because then they can read about the universe overall. So I'm trying. So if you guys see stuff and you're like, hey, this would be really cool, I think, or if you have time, do this kind of thing. This would, I value that feedback, even if I can't do every single thing. I value the feedback because sometimes I'm on the fence about stuff and I'm like, I don't really know what's the best way, and I just pick one and go for it. And then come to find out that way was the best, or sometimes it was not the best. It would be better if you went this way, and I don't know because I can only gauge it from my own eyes. Can I ask what type of brushes you use? So this brush in particular is a Citadel. It's just a small layer brush. Citadel is the same company, or is owned by Games Workshop, who makes Warhammer. But Army Painter makes paint brushes. There's other companies that make like miniature grade painting brushes. But I even have, I can show you here, just had to finish that. I use a variety of different things. Like I just have this junky brush, just those cheap plastic bristles that you get from like those water washable paints. This is great for just mixing stuff because you don't care what happens to it. You can use makeup brushes for dry brushing. Again, you don't care what happens to these because they're super cheap. And then you can get different just paint kits from art stores like Michael's or Hobby Lobby or Amazon. And you get just a variety of different brushes for different jobs. And when they start to fray, you don't really care because you got them pretty cheap. I don't like to be wasteful, but I found that sometimes, even with the better brushes, I've had issues where they fray, and there's different things you can learn about not letting the paint get too far up on the brush and whatnot. But definitely for beginners, because like a brush like this can be like $8 or $9. Like they can get pretty expensive, like even more than that. And that doesn't sound like much, but you generally are going to need 3 or 4 brushes to kind of get started. And you're like, okay, well now I'm already at $30 and all I got was 4 brushes, and that's not even counting the paints and everything else. So I try to find sneaky ways to not spend a lot of money. Because I can see how it can be very difficult for people getting into the hobby. So you want to... I definitely am not one of those painters who's like a snob about like, oh, you have to have this $60 paintbrush, otherwise you might as well just be painting with your fingers. Like, I get it. I have to ease into this stuff. The topic of starter kits, are you considering making more 2 players, for example, versus Faust? So I think I'm still going to offer a 2-player kit. But I personally, in the past, I played with like my brothers or with others, my friends, and we've split starter kits. And sometimes when you play games like Warhammer, there's lots of factions, but they only make 1 2-player starter kit. And you have to either like both of the factions or like one of them and then find someone who likes the other one. Otherwise, the starter doesn't really feel like a value because you're like, well, this is great, but I don't play this faction. I have no interest in them. So I've personally liked and preferred the single player starter kit because then you get what you want. And maybe your friend likes the exact same faction, and now you don't have to feel like you had to buy models you didn't want. So now you can both buy the exact same starter kit, right? You can both play the game, and you both got models that you wanted specifically. So I want to... Oh, music stopped. I kind of feel like that's the way to do it right now, but I don't know if that's a guarantee, and I'm open to doing 2-player starters. Yeah, so I'm open to what the community feels is the best option is the option I want to try to do. Plus make things, accessible. I know as a new player into anything, the first thing you're going to be thinking about is do I like the universe, right? Are the models cool? Does the game seem fun? Am I already emotionally invested? And then really quickly, right away after that is how much does it cost? How difficult is it to assemble? Or, for me, getting into a new game, cost is like the first thing I bump into, because if the game is $500 to get an initial army to be able to play the game, that's a very big investment for me to finally realize after I've put everything together and I've played a couple of games to be like, I don't like this game. So I want it to be affordable. the starter kits are all going to be pike size, which basically squad size. So they're going to come with 4 units plus 2 drones, which is a third of your entire force that you would be allowed to play at maximum. So yeah, it's not the full army, but there are rules for playing pike versus pike. And then there's obviously rules for playing company versus company, which is 3 pikes. So then that way you can buy the game, you can buy the starter kit, put everything together. You can play an actual game mode that was made for that size of battle. So you don't have to feel like you're playing a third of the game or a half of the game, because that happens a lot in other games that I've played. You buy a starter kit, you put everything together with your buddy, and then you're like, well, one faction feels really overbalanced over the other one because by using points, right? Most games are balanced by points. When we're using points, I would have a totally different size army than you, maybe. And then it would kind of balance differently. When the starter kit wasn't really considered to be balanced, the starter kits that we're going to have are very comparable, very close, within like 10 points of each other, which is like nothing because most games can be 300 to 400 points. So if you're like 10 points off, you make one guy a veteran. That's usually just a 10-point upgrade. He's the exact same model. And now everybody's pretty close to being exactly balanced. And I think that's a better approach for everyone to feel like they're getting an actual taste of the game to then invest more versus, I don't know if I like them and everything. Plus, we have all the stats for free. The rules are free. So you can look at anything. You can just proxy something to test it, see if you like it, and then decide to buy it or not. I hate playing games where like I have to buy something and then find out I really don't like it. I really don't like that. I really don't like that. That always drives me nuts. Always. It always bugs me. Because, I'm investing the money into this something and then, oh, I don't like this. Which sometimes it's just part of trying something new, but still, like I want everyone who's willing to give Revelation Skirmish a chance to feel like we're not taking advantage of them. We're not doing a bait and switch. Like we're trying to allow you to pick something that you like, or at least hopefully that you like, and then from there, you're kind of determining which faction is for you or which play style is for you, kind of deal. No. This is just the turret for the Kozin. This is for the harasser. No, this is the striker. No. Yeah, I think it's the striker. Yeah, because the assassin is the rocket one. I'll get it down. I haven't played enough with the Kozins. I've been bad. I've. How can you be the creator and you don't even know the names of all your stuff? Over here looking up pictures. Where does this part go? It's funny because some models I'll pick up the part and I know exactly where it is. I know exactly where it goes. Like I could just like a random part and I'll be like, oh, boom. That's the Sierra's pelvis. I know you're the right foot for the Sierra, whatever. And then other kits I like. The heck does this go to? Oh, okay, yeah, it goes to the. Because it's a piece that I don't have as much experience with. But I appreciate that, Franklin. I do. And I definitely do want people excited. I'm excited. I hope other people can be. We just need to stop going through frickin' world-altering pandemics and then going right into a frickin' financial recession. That would just be awesome. We could stop having life-changing events. back to back, please. I'm actually, despite things not being where I would like them to be as the the creator over here and everything, I am excited that there's more and more people lately that are paying attention to Revelations, despite all the nonsense going on in all of our countries. Things have been a bit rough for a minute. Well, I could definitely see how you think it looks like a drone, though, Maggie. But it's the turret. These are actually also the first cousins that I've ever painted. I think I don't think I've ever painted one. It's been on my list. I'm bad. I've been bad. Well, I'm just gonna go ahead and say that 2022 was just like it was a year. Because I don't know where the heck I was, basically, which is weird because it wasn't 2020 that was as much of the problem. 2022, man, it just... But we're catching on all the stuff now in 23. All the models that have been like sitting there waiting to get finalized, and I'm gonna leave that. No, I don't want to do that one either. We're gonna leave that. I'm not gonna do black on that one. Yes, the Cozen is the only tank that currently has the ability. Forgot about the Cozens that can jump, which is, I think, is a fun little mechanic for them to be different. I can't imagine we use that mechanic pretty much with anybody else. It wouldn't really make sense. So they get to kind of... It's very likely they'll get to keep that as their own little quirk forever. Yeah, the Cozens needs a little bit more attention in general. But, you know, being part of Orca, they're not as well known, I think, to... They're not necessarily as flashy. I mean, they are very unique. I mean, like, it's a very different sort of vehicle, especially anything else in Revelations. They're not as imposing visually as, you know, some of the big tanks like the Orion or even the Mars or the Panzer. But they're fun. They're very fast. I think I just saw didn't just see. Their base defense is 7, which is like, it's the highest base defense in the game right now. Because they just move so fast that they're very hard to hit. They're very weak, though, so if you can hit them, they kind of just fall apart. But they're very fast. And what's fun about the Cozens is they're actually a failed aircraft. So it was an aircraft that was prototype that was designed that didn't really work. And then it was actually Abigail Black, who's the leader of Orca now, or of Haven. She came up with the idea of like, well, what if we used them as like hover tanks? So they're hover tanks that you can drop, you can hot drop because they can jump. So they can still kind of do a little bit of like the fighter craft, but they're not able to full on fly because they took off the other fin that would have been here and they put the one of the turrets. So there's 4 different loadouts for the Cozens too, so that's also fun that they get a healthy amount of variety. And they're pretty cheap to field. Like, I think the highest one is 15. They're normally like 10. Yes, you cannot hide them in the forest because hover tanks cannot go in the woods. But if you had a clearing in the trees, they could jump and land in the middle of the woods. That would still be legal. They just can't jump into the dense parts. Or I guess they can once. They can... Oh, that would be a fun rule. You could push them into the trees and then, like, that's it. The vehicle's done. Yeah. I thought the smoked ability sounded fun when I came up with it. I was like, oh, that sounds cool. Like, you just shoot something with a bunch of little rockets, and then they're shrouded in smoke, which makes it difficult for them to see, too. So it goes both ways with that. Very intense violin music. This wasn't part of my predetermined playlist, but I guess it works. Except it feels like it's the same song again. Let's change it back to the other one. Here we go. You guys were discussing the smoked rule?
Reactor online. Sensors online. Weapons systems online. All systems normal.
Almost out of all the black paint that I spilled out. Let's do this little doodad. If you like synthwave, but if you do want to give it a try, I bought audio. I think I have. Wait. Yeah, I have one. It's like a compilation of like, I don't know, it's like an hour long of White Bat studio stuff. But yes, I do like synthwave. I like good synthwave because I've heard some. Oh man, there's some stuff going on now that I'm positive is AI generated, and it's just awful. It's terrible. It's very distracting. It's not all bad. I think I came across one where I was like, this is probably AI created, but it's not that bad. But some of it is just some guy just like, hey, I put something in and it just came out, and yeah, we're just gonna put it up. All right, let's move all these other guys out of the way. Get back to this Renatus. So we need to do the missiles, which was Dragon Red. Dragon Red. Where is this color? Dragon Red. Perfect. Yes, Synthwave. It's usually pretty fun. My wife will make fun of me. It sounds like just a bunch of like 80s music, but I don't know. I like it. Nothing wrong with 80s music anyway. It's not usually I'm not usually one to play like older music. But synthwave it just feels different. Mix it up. No, this isn't looking right. What was the other color? Bloody red. I'm pretty sure that's this one. Yeah, that. Where's the other? Yeah, I'm gonna use the bloody red. I'm not gonna use this one. I'll have to look those guys up, or those channels up, because there's, I'm usually open to finding new ones. I kind of had like burnt myself out on it because I kind of had like the same couple of soundtracks that just kind of going in loop almost when I was working, so it just kind of got boring. But I do like it. Yeah, I think this is the color I used. Good thing I wrote it down, because I would have ended up doing the wrong thing and been sad. Now for some missiles. Oh, and I put that bottle right in front of this chat. Okay. T-Russell. Don't need these little bits and bobs. Oh. There we go. It's one of those things where like you can go really quick through here, but I feel like it's really prone to area for mistakes. It's usually a good idea to rotate it a little bit so you can see if you missed any. I'll put the wash in here anyway. It's going to help darken around some of this, but make it look a little less obvious that I didn't paint all of it. Will be a nice addition to my Queen's Fury forces. Which has a nice variety of mechs anyway at the moment, but it's always nice to add another one. I'll have to end up painting up another Renatus down the road for them. Just because this is a good long-range support mech. I mix way too much paint. I don't know why I did so much of this. There's nothing I can even use it on. This is all that there is. So, yeah, that's better. Let's do it that angle. Thought maybe I heard thunder. We've been getting a lot of thunderstorms because for those that don't know, we moved, my family and I, we moved about 7 months ago, an hour north of where we used to be. Well, where we used to be in Florida, we had water pretty close to us in basically all directions except to the north. So it made it so that it kind of shielded us from a lot of rain, surprisingly. Even though other areas in the same exact county might get a lot of rain, we wouldn't. But so I haven't lived in this house through the summer months yet. So like it's all brand new to us. And we've gotten we'll have like pockets where like we in this area we don't get rain, but other nearby areas do. So it's very reminiscent of where I used to live. But then we've had just quite a bit more rain than I'm usually used to. And we've just had a lot of thunderstorms recently. Which is nice. I enjoy thunderstorms. I like them. But it does a little bit interfere with things. So we need gunmetal. Now we're going to be using Army Painter gunmetal. We're going to do some light dry brushing on the thrusters and just the barest amount here at the tip for the laser. And then the dry brushing for now will be completed. And then we'll come back and we'll actually start doing the wash. Which is actually a really good place to be. So we do just a tiny bit because I don't need very much. I do not. And I'll probably still thin it down a tiny bit. It's just that little tiny bit. And I don't want to use very much thinner. So I don't want to, I'll just leave it there and I'll push it in with the brush. So let's get the brush here, mix a little bit of that thinner and then just mix it together a little bit. Just thin it down just a touch. Because sometimes, for those of you who don't paint a lot, the metallics, for at least most brands that I've ever dealt with, metallics can be really thick, which is fine, except that it can end up making things not look the best. So, but it's fine in the sense that you can work with it. You know, it just takes a little bit of planning. So I'm going to use this brush. I don't really care what happens to this. We can use this one as a dry brush because we're only doing a little tiny bit. Just get a little bit, kind of thin it out some, and then we'll pull out most of it. Where is the Renatus? Oh, it's right in front of me. Now we'll start dry brushing. And the key with dry brushing is you don't want a lot of paint, because you're just trying to bring out some of those natural details or just add this color without completely wiping out the color that was beneath it. So that's why I use black underneath, so that way when we go to do the thruster nozzles, you can still see that kind of like roughed up metal look. That's what I'm going for. Now, is it realistic for them to be painted this way? Probably not exactly. There's probably more of like scorch marks and other things that would be there, but I've experimented with some things when I've been painting, and I feel that sometimes it's good to just do kind of what's expected. This is generally the way that you do these kind of parts. And then that way, I don't know, it feels natural looking at it in comparison to it being a miniature. Because like realistically, these machines wouldn't be painted all these crazy colors, right? They'd be painted camo, they'd be painted very solid, easy to repair and patch back up colors, but it's freaking boring, right? So you can do it the right way, but generally speaking, you need some fancy colors. So I like to paint most of my forces in like the parade colors, as opposed to what they might use like actually in combat. Some forces, I've just had like the standing rule. Some forces in Revelations will paint their stuff in camo. Others won't. And the reason being is like the Blood Wolves don't do it because the Blood Wolves, which are an elite mercenary force, they want you to know you're fighting Blood Wolves, right? They want you to know that's who you're dealing with because they want to get in your head. So they don't mind you knowing exactly who you're fighting. When other forces, for other nations, they might be completely fine with like, look, we need to go in camo because that's just smarter play. Nothing wrong with that. That way it also gives players the room to kind of do what they want instead of being like, this is exactly how they would be at all times. You know, I can just say, this is what the parade scheme is. You can do the parade scheme, or you can choose to do camo, or you can come up with your own parade schemes too, because there's lots of other forces that we have not gotten around to. So like the Core Republic stuff that I've been painting is the generic Republic paint parade scheme, but it's also the exact parade scheme that's used by one of the legions that we're building up to. So I want that one to be the parade color, but they're also known for using that, but they don't use camo because they want you to know that you're fighting the Core Republic. Granted, the Core Republic, generally speaking, everyone kind of knows how they do things because they're very traditional and their ways still work because they basically just overwhelm you, so it's tough to beat that because they have the means to do so. Still got to do that laser barrel up here and a little bit more. There we go. Yeah. So it's hopefully a little bit more distinguishable because, you know, a lot of this, obviously it might get played on the table, but I mean, primarily for my forces, their main job is selling the models, right? Is doing the marketing and the promotions. So I really need them to look good. That's why I use a lot of colors like these that pop very vibrantly. The grass pops, and the paint schemes are generally very clean. Even though it's got dry brushing for weathering, it's very clean. But that's because I want it to photograph very well, very clearly, so that hopefully it will interest people into checking things out. If I did everything looking all tan and just blended into everything, it would make sense, but it wouldn't be as visually appealing, I think. Now, maybe in person it would be great, but when you're trying to... There's just a difference in, like, if you have stronger, rich, vibrant colors, they just pop better, I think, in photographs. So now is the time mixing back up the brown wash. Hello again, whoa. Okay. Now where is my, aha, my infamous wash brush. This has been the wash brush I've been using for 4 years now, painting. I think it's been the exact same one the whole time. So I'm gonna start putting on this wash and start popping out all these details. Hold it where you can see it. Yeah, wash, 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 wash. Lots of wash, all the wash. So much wash. And don't want it to stay pulled up there. And now's the easier time to go through and move it around where I want it to be. Think it's in there or what? Well. That'll be cool. Well, I mean, I've wanted to do some of that, like panel liner. I've heard some people say it's like it's just amazing, and but I've heard other people say that like oil washes are amazing, which to me, my experience with those has been so-so. It depends on what the look is. I think the oil washes look great on stuff that you want to be really dirty, because they're really hard to get super clean after. So if you're going for a dirty look, it's great. If you're not, then it ends up being lots of work, in my opinion. I do want to try the panel liner. These things I've already kind of like started doing this particular method, so I want to try to keep it the same for them. I don't want some units to look different. I do want to try it. Maybe it'd be a good idea to test it out on some mercenaries or something that if it doesn't work the way I want, it'll be okay. I've gotten very comfortable with my method, though. So I've been like, do you really want to mess with what's working, what you like? It's like, well, but if the promise is like it's magic, right? Like, oh man, if it could save me time, that's worth learning, right? I'm definitely all for learning methods that save me time, but still look the way that I want when they're done. I mean, a lot of this painting journey for me has been just figuring out what do you like? How do you like it to look when it's all said and done? And then how do you get there? What I used to like, I don't really like anymore. And, you know, so who knows how it'll be in a couple of years. Maybe I'll end up getting into oil painting. Probably not, but I don't want to discount it completely. Mostly because I don't really want to spend the time. My brother's been trying to get me, he's tried in the past to get me into it, and it's like, I gotta buy all new paints, and I gotta learn all new techniques, and I finally got where I think I'm an okay painter. Do I really want to do that to myself? I don't know. Well, yeah, right. Which the crisp outlines are what I want. Like I want everything to pop right way, right? I don't want to. Yeah, and that's everything has its own drawbacks and stuff, and that's what I've kind of learned is at the end of the day, if there's a certain look that you're going for, you have to just come to grips with whatever that workload is going to require. That's just how it is. Obviously, camo is camo, but there's a reason you choose colors that are used by factions. Oh, wait. I'm assuming you meant to say, but is there a reason you choose colors that are used by factions, right? Is that what you were asking, Franklin? I don't want to misunderstand the question and go off on a tangent and be going in the wrong direction. Spend 5 minutes talking about my color theory. The weird delay here for YouTube, so I can't just ask a question. Okay, so yes, every faction has its base parade scheme, and some of them were chosen for more specific reasons. Some of the other ones I was like, I like this color scheme. I feel it kind of works for them. So like Haven, for example, I kind of just felt that the UN kind of scheme where it's like army green with sky blue, light blue, just kind of felt good for them. And then I've kind of just evolved it into the, army green and emerald color scheme now. I feel like that just works together, right? It just works. So like the Core Republic uses red in their instance because they were despite Revelations not being from Earth, Earth isn't part of the equation with them. It's just humans in an alternate kind of space. The Core Republic was heavily inspired by like space Rome. So I felt red, definitely. Like when I think of Rome, I typically think of, like when I think of the military, I'm thinking of red. And so I kind of just went with that, and red and tan kind of just felt natural together. So that's kind of just where we ended up there. The Blood Wolves, I figured, actually I have one here, one of the old Sierra 2Bs. I went with their paint scheme because a Blood Wolf is white primarily with a gray component to it. And then to tie into the visuals of what you kind of think of when you hear blood, I was like, well, it'd be cool for there to be like red striping on them. So it plays into, even though a Blood Wolf is white and gray, the red just plays into, it's a good accent color. And then I think doing like red striping just helps simulate, like visually insinuate blood, which then you can think, well, that makes them more imposing, right? Just playing around with that idea. Some of the other factions, like the Union of Stars, they're like different shades of blue, and that's because a lot of their stuff visually began by being inspired by like what I thought like an aquatic themed faction would look like. It doesn't mean that the people aren't living underwater, but their mechs are more underwater animal inspired, at least elements of them. So like the Ares looks like a giant crab. Well, it's kind of cool to be like that. Well, they would have blood on their jaw after a kill. Exactly. Yes, exactly. That symbology kind of ties right in with the Blood Wolves. And then, you know, Faust Union, to me, their original inspiration felt like red, solid, bright red was the way to go. So, and then as it developed, and now there's the two sub-factions where you have the Krasny Malat and then the Sturmhammers. Sturmhammers continued the vibrant red look, while the Krasny went into the dark green, maybe mix in some maroon later for them as like an accent color, but that dark green is them. So then visually on the table, you also really, and a lot of it ends up boiling down to how does this make each faction feel slightly different visually, because my intention with Revelations is that unlike other games like Battletech, not knocking Battletech, but just my preference is that each faction feels different visually. Not counting mercenaries, of course, but where if I sit down to play against you, yeah, you might not paint your Republic stuff in the standard parade colors, but I can visually tell that it's Republic mechs really quick, right? Well, obviously I could, but you would be able to tell that of me when I sat down to play with you as well. So I think having very visually distinct color schemes helps sell that idea. If someone does it the parade colorway, if they decide to do their own stuff, you know, whatever, that's totally fine. But so I try to come up with color schemes now as I'm developing them. Like what is going to be super vibrant for photographs. And that's kind of where, like, I really like this green and this emerald really pops. The Blood Wolves super pop. That red accent color for them ties into the lore and then visually looks very interesting, I think. You could probably make the argument they chose red as a challenge and insult to the core. Well, they as everything stands right now, they're actually pretty close with the Republic. That's why they use a lot of their machines. But the Blood Wolves very much want you to know who they are when they arrive, because they have developed very rapidly a spectacular reputation as being incredibly fierce. In order to even to be considered to join the Blood Wolves, you have to already be a veteran, and you have to some of the lore isn't 100% finalized, but I mean, you have to be able to demonstrate that you are skilled, that you're already come to them pre-trained. Like, they'll continue training, but they don't want to take someone who's completely green. Now, would they at some point, maybe somebody that they know brings in their child, or there could be special circumstances, but by and large, the Blood Wolves are known for being already skilled fighters, and then they become a Blood Wolf who then takes them even further. So you're fighting with a very experienced group of other soldiers that are coming together as part of the Blood Wolf force. Well, it could be, yeah, because the Blood Wolves and the Faust Union are not friends. They have bumped heads a couple of times. The Sturmhammers really don't like them. The Krasny don't really like. There's like all these like legends and stuff of Blood Wolves, basically, because the Krasny like gossip is a big deal, and legend and myth. But for the Sturmhammers, they don't care for them. They've been showed up a time or two by the Blood Wolves, so they kind of have their own their own vendetta. Plus, anybody who's like repeatedly been a staunch supporter of the Core Republic is already like seen negatively, because the Faust Union is so opposed to the Republic. So it's pretty well known that the Blood Wolves have worked for the Republic on a number of missions, which has also helped them to accelerate and expand quickly because they had big contracts. But which then just furthers the Faust just being like, you know, shake my fist, I don't like you. So we got the wash done on that one. We can set that over there. What else can we tinker with in the meantime? We could, I guess we could do some emerald and get some of this little bit more work on the T-Rosses done. Since I'm sitting here. They won't get to the point of getting the wash on tonight, but they'll at least get a little bit further down the road kind of thing. So very much, Franklin, in terms of like the paint schemes and stuff, I try to balance the in-universe ideas and then trying to make the color schemes very... They don't have to always be 100% different than somebody else, but they need to be distinct enough where you, if someone played with all the parade colors, you could tell who they were. And then at the same time, they work well for photography. So it's kind of trying to balance something that looks cool and then something that also works in their setting. And I know as time goes on, it'll get more difficult to make everybody feel, you know, more different because there'll be more and more forces, but that'll be a fun challenge to overcome, I'm sure. Because then that also means that we're continuing to grow, and that's a good problem to have, not a bad one. I more find a problem because I'll be like, well, what about, because I'll sit down and try to come up with a new color scheme, and then I find like, oh, it's just something, and then dark gray again. Oh man, I keep going back to dark gray, and I'm trying to not just do color schemes that I think are great, like trying to think of, haha, great, but trying to think of what makes these guys look different than somebody else. And kind of do something that we haven't seen yet, as opposed to just doing, oh, okay, well, it's a new faction, so of course they have to have gray mixed into them, kind of thing. And then I have the problem where I have to be careful I don't end up coming too close to somebody else's paint scheme. And really, it's not, at the end of the day, if I copied another element out there's paint scheme, I don't really think that's the end of the world, because a paint scheme isn't really copying the lore, copying the visual look and everything else. But I'm always concerned that someone's going to be like, hey, this other universe does that exact same color scheme. You took that. Yeah, that's a good idea too, to look at the flags. And I tried more or less to come up with that a little bit when I'd started doing the boundary colors for the factions, for the universe map, planet map. So I kind of use that as like the beginning reference anyhow, but it's not 100% because Orca, at least not yet, is purple, right? Granted, the Orca space is the combination of all the independent worlds and sub-factions, so, or really sub-nations. So the purple is kind of just like a holding color anyway. Let's do the missile one. Yes, purple is a cool color. And I'm looking forward to being able to use purple at some point. I'm thinking of using it when we get to the Ethereal Kingdom. They're made up of a number of different houses, right? Because they're medieval themed. They're like space knights, so why not play into the house idea? So I was thinking of doing... Whoops. One house that does use purple as their primary, and purple will also get used when we get to the Vortorian Federation. I've had the color scheme of orange and purple, which I know is kind of loud as a color scheme, but I've had them. The idea of them being at least one of their forces being orange and purple for like back when Revelations was barely any idea whatsoever, years and years ago. Yeah, I bet you do. Well, we'll get to see some purple when we do the streamed battle during Revicon, because I have the crystals that are going to be on the map are purple. So that was cool. I got to experiment. I haven't ever used purple in my airbrush before, so that was cool. I think they turned out really, really cool, which I've also never painted crystals before either, so it was also an experiment. But I'm very happy with how they turned out. And then we need to do this up here. Yep, and then I did the sides. And then we just run it along the length. Side's done. But book the day from work so I can join. Oh, that would be really cool. That would be really cool. There's somebody else actually who's going to be there. On Discord, it's Remy Luna. He's going to be there. He had mentioned that he took off of work as well, which I think is so cool. I don't know. That's a big deal for me. So I think that's so neat. Oh, I did both of those. Yeah, I passed up. It's not any big deal because it's my own event, right? But I do freelance video work, and I got a call today to see like, hey, could you work Tuesday? And I was thinking like, well, it'd be nice to go and like, get the job. It'd probably be fairly easy, just one day kind of thing. But then I was like, oh man, if I do that, then that's gonna affect my. I got like all this other stuff to plan for. I'm like, nah, I can't take it and take a chance on, because it'll throw off my primary client work, and then I'll have to make up a day because I normally do Monday through Wednesday. So then I have to make up a day. Now I'm working Thursday, so now all I've got left to do is Friday for the. I'm like, nah, I can't take it. I need to just not do any extra work. I've already got a lot to do for Friday. Take a peek at the schedule. Oh yeah, no. Oh, I'm glad. I'm glad you're looking forward to it. Yeah, it's a lot of cool stuff to get into, and it'll be a fun time. I think it'll be outside of all of the news and stuff. I think it'll be cool to have like a set aside event. It's a special thing. It's not just like doing a random paint stream or something or posting some video. It's like a semi hangout and meet and greet kind of thing. It's like an all-in-one kind of thing. I'm a little nervous. I have no idea like how many people are going to show up. Like I know how many people so far have downloaded or have reserved a ticket, but I know that some of those people might not be available when the day comes, or they might not stay the whole time, or maybe they just wanted to join so they could get the gift cards giveaways, which is fine. But I think either way, there's enough people coming that I think they're gonna have a good time, and I think it'll be fun. Gives me like a long chance to nerd out on Revelations with people, so that'll be cool. It's actually going to be on YouTube. So if Franklin, are you on with us with Discord or Facebook or anything for Revelations? Because I'm gonna be streaming it here on YouTube. But you can sign up for the event, and then you get entered into. We're gonna have two different drawings for two gift cards. One to my shop, to the Revelations store, and another to the guy Thunderhead Studios, who made the terrain that we're going to be using for the event. He's giving away a gift card also to his shop. Oh, I need to pink that. I missed that. Can't miss that. That would be messed up. Bumping the mic with my paintbrush. Going on. I need to paint this here. I think that's everything except for I need to paint the stripes here on the arm. Even though it's not the same style arm, I think I'll put them like in the relative same spot and it'll look good. Look at that, we're now up to 8 people watching, which is not a lot, but it's bigger numbers for my stuff. Welcome to everybody who's popping in. Making some progress here on this T-Ross. It's a new T-Ross too. It's coming out. We're going to talk about it at the convention. We're streaming on YouTube next week. Yeah, that looks good. We need to still do the gray, but that gets the emerald done for him. Now we'll do the other one. Already done the missile, so I don't have to worry about that. Go ahead and do this little tiny spot here. And just, okay, good. My personal favorite faction and why. Well, I love all of the factions equally, but I love some of them slightly more than others. No, I hesitate to answer only because I don't want people thinking, oh, those are Rick's favorite. That's why they're getting such and such, and that's why blah, blah, blah. But I do have a special affinity for the Blood Wolves. And because I have plans for what they're going to be able to do in the stories in the future. And they're one of my more... Every time I start to develop a new faction, I spend time with them, right? Creating and kind of fleshing them out. And then I start finding aspects about them because it's now going through like the invention cycle with them. And then I start figuring out and discovering things that I really, 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 really like about them. And so I always have something to anchor to that I'm like, oh, this is so cool about them. You know, and I obviously have a affinity for the Republic because the Republic is they're a big deal to the story, obviously. It wouldn't really be much without them. But there are parts about the Republic I love, and other parts that's like it's necessary for the story, but it's not. They're not really the good guys in most. Well, based in perspective. That was a really roundabout way of probably not answering that question very directly, and I'm sorry. It's tough though, because it's like when you're creating them. Oh, music stuff. You don't really. I really struggle with not wanting to show favoritism. So I try. That's why I always try to come up with stuff about them that I like about all of them, so that I have something that keeps them like, oh yeah, this needs to get. We need to do this. So that'll really make them stand out and be different, or their mechs behave this way, or something that's like, oh yeah, I get super pumped about that aspect of them. I'm also really excited to expand into like more of the Ethereal Kingdom. I think a lot of people will like them. The Karldra faction, which are effectively space Vikings. I think a lot of people will find them fun if they're into that kind of thing. Vena will be really cool when we get to them. There's parts of the Faust Union I really, really love and I want to explore more of. I really just want to be able to do this as my full-time thing, so we can really get into a lot of stories and a lot of new features out there. Yes, freaking laser eyes. Yeah. Well, I think that's interesting, Purple. That you're between those two, because they're so. I don't want to just say different, but just they're obviously they're opposites to each other. They do not like or trust one another, but I think their designs are very, very cool. And if we could get some more time to develop like the Union of Stars, I think they would really flesh out. And I think, that comes down to preference. They all have super cool things about them. And I don't even know, some of the factions don't even really have much fleshed out at all. Just because you can only do so much before, like, at least for me, before it's paralyzing. You can do too much. And like, I don't need to explain yet how are Palau's mechs gonna look. Well, it doesn't matter yet. We're not anywhere near bringing them out, so we don't need to get caught up with that just yet. But when we do, I'm positive they're going to be cool, because they'll fit the overall aesthetic for Revelations, which I'm obviously incredibly biased for liking. Especially as we continue to refine that, like with the Sierra and the Juggernaut. Reading the Hornet appreciation for the Faust Union, because yeah, I saw your. Ooh. Oh, I touched it. Nice handprint right in there. Just thin that back out. Yeah, because you had recently commented on Discord, right, about that, and I hadn't had a chance to go in there, and I think I had read it, but I didn't have a chance to go in and reply yet. And to answer your other question, yes, on Discord, we will see more of Kraus. Actually, Kraus is because that story takes place in the past, in the timeline, and when Kraus was obviously a boy, so he is now a playable Juggernaut pilot in the game, and he actually is a Sturmhammer soldier. So he pilots a bright red Juggernaut, just like in the story. He'll be a fun character to tell more stories because he grew up obviously in poverty, but he was able to work his way up in the very elite and let's just say snobbish Sturmhammers. So being able to be a accomplished soldier within their ranks is not a small thing for someone like him with his background. Yeah, he's a very cool character, like in the game. I think I got all the panels again on this one. Yeah, I think so. Let's work on the drums for a little bit. See what we can emerald up for them. Do this here. That makes sense. It feels right. So I haven't fully decided, Franklin. I've thought about that. Like, for example, we're in the timeline, we're over 400 cycles or years now away from when the events in the war against the synthetics and the collector. So while it's 400 years apart, what happened then dramatically played a part in how things are now, right? Because everything used to be the Republic, but because of the events with the synthetics, you now have 9 other nations and a variety of sub-factions and everything else out there, these other groups that are not part of the Republic anymore and don't want to go back, most of them. And so I've thought about, like, down the road, should we tell stories back then? Because those events do matter. Like, some of those choices do matter to the present time. Or does it feel cliche to be like, oh, now we're going to go tell the old stuff? We'll kind of see how things progress, but I would like to. I don't know if it would necessarily be quite as many eras by any stretch as like with, because I think in my opinion, one of the downsides as a fan, as a player of BattleTech, one of the downsides of BattleTech is there are so many eras that it starts to feel like, well, what is special? And yeah, you could base it off of the tech, but like the story, yeah, there's some big major plot points of different eras, but my concern is, how do you get to the point where it's so difficult for a new person to get involved? Like a couple years ago, I tried to get a friend to play BattleTech with me. Like, we were going to play Alpha Strike. This was before Revelation Skirmish, and he didn't really know much about BattleTech. He played MechWarrior a little bit, but he didn't really know much about the lore. And it was so difficult to try to introduce him to everything, because I didn't want to just do 3025, because I personally find that boring. Because I like the clans, I like the Dark Age, so I like other stuff. But he found it so difficult to get into it, and there's just so much information. So I've tried to remember that for Revelations, of like, we need to be careful that we never get too far into the point where it's now too difficult for someone to come alongside and say, hey, this is where you get in at. So try to be like very friendly for, specifically for new people, and introducing them into the universe to make it accessible for them. So I don't know, I can't say at this point, current day, how many eras will there ever be. I could see us getting into at least 2, maybe 3. But there's also so many stories to tell right now that that's not necessarily a big concern, but it's a good question, and it's a good thing to keep in mind. I'm very, as a fan of other IPs like Star Wars and Battletech, I'm very, I want things to remain accessible for the new people, but stay exciting for the people who've been here and have supported. And you know, at some point, things might be a little bit more difficult, but I try to keep it where there's, like, I put on the store now, if you're new to Revelations, like, start here and stuff. Trying to, the intention is to try to have it a little bit easier, and we'll get better and better at that. I don't want to do too much emerald on there, and then I'll overdo it, and it'll be mostly emeralds. Did you happen, Franklin, if you wanted, did you happen to find where the sign up was for Revicon? If you were able to, if you wanted to go? I know if you found some of our social stuff so that you knew where to. I assume you have to have been on Facebook or something, Discord, because it'd be unlikely that you'd be here and not. It's possible, but it'd be really cool if you found it a different way. My goal this year overall is to get everything positioned so that next year we can really grow, because it'll be a lot easier to find everything. There'll be starter kits for everything. This is using this as like the build up year, like get everything in position, trying to work on getting all the STLs pre-supported. There'll be a lot more painted pictures. There's assembly videos, like get the novels moving again. A lot of stuff that we've needed to do. It's just, it's a lot for a small team to do. Okay, you're on Discord. Okay. Okay. What do I want to do with these guys? Every time something's new for me to paint, you always go through like the learning curve of like, how do I hold it? Where's the best place to paint? Yeah, we definitely are. A lot for a small team, but I don't know a different way to do it yet, because if you don't have the money to have a big team or a medium-sized team, then you gotta do what you gotta do. We can do this one here. I heard something beeping. Man, I touched that. Uh, yeah, you can. And I volunteers are tough for me. I've been burned in the past, so it's harder for me. Yeah, let's do this big one here. It might be cool. Yes, and I know you were busy before getting all your real world stuff together, so I know you've been booked for a couple of months now. We can still discuss some things. I have an issue with being able to fully delegate certain things, because if my hand has to be on it to a certain extent, then you kind of just start thinking like, well, then I'll just do it. It's not necessarily a good thing. And then you have to pick certain projects and something that can be handed off, and it's not hard. It's a stretching phase. It is hard to offload. It is. Because I can say, yeah, it would be great if I didn't have to do X anymore. But to give it to anybody would be not, it would just, you have to get that person up to speed. And I know you get it. Just all the components that go with that. It's not as easy as just like, okay, here you go. And I never have to think about it again. And really, unfortunately, a lot of this stuff comes down to money. And it's not money necessarily to just pay someone. It's that, like, if I don't need to worry about money from freelance work anymore and I can let that go fully, well, now I have a lot more control over my schedule. And now, now we can do more Revelation stuff or something like that. But I have faith that that is coming. More people are getting excited. I'd like to be in a different spot right now, but that's just not how it was meant to be, so can't cry over that. Only other choice would be to just give up, which I don't want to do, so keep going. I do see some of those other. It's weird because I've looked at some other companies before, like smaller ones, small studios, and they'll have like this initial burst of excitement and success, and then they don't continue, and you're like, what the heck, man? Like, I wish I had as much money as you did to get started. I had to rub like 2 sticks together in a bag of sand in order to be like to get anything going. You were handed a pot of money. Why aren't you still making stuff? And I imagine for them, it's got to be weird to like have decent success at first, and then it stagnates. And then it's like, well, why did we, you go through all that self-doubt of why was it working before? and then like now no one plays my game, and now and then you go through all that, and then you just crash, right? You just lose it. So I don't yet know which is better, slow burn to get going or the boost at first. I'd like to think the boost at first at least has enough positives, but it really truly might not. Well, there's no intention of doing that, Purple. I've got a lot of stuff still to do. So, and we've been very blessed that keep having the right needs being met. Maybe not always as fast as I would like, but the right needs being met to keep things moving. So it's been encouraging to like, well, then obviously not supposed to give up. Yeah, yeah, well, I know in your case, yeah. I know it would be better in my head. You're like, I know it would be better to have a much more fleshed out environment and universe for the players or the readers to get into. It's like, it's one thing for you to have one book and it just goes viral and explodes, and then that's it. There's nothing else. Or you, like, someone sees your game and they're like, oh man, this is so cool. They back your Kickstarter or whatever, and then it takes you 2 years to develop anything else, right? You've lost all that fire and momentum that you had with them. There was nothing new for them to stay engaged with. At this point, I have to go and count how many models we have. When you count all the variants, it's several dozen. And now 5 playable factions. You know, that's a healthy amount of stuff for someone to get into. And we're still trying to continue to improve things, like improving the entire Sierra platform was a lot of work, but man, it's such a better model than what it was. It's awesome. It's phenomenal. Yes. And I try to remember that. Whoa, I do. Looking back on it, the slow burn will be better because it will test and show your resolve to make your universe how you want it to be in. Well, that's actually something I've been trying to point out to people, Purple, at this point, is like, look, we're coming up on 3 years. That's not a small achievement. Like in the grand scheme of things, 3 years is nothing. But in the scheme of a company sticking with a product despite surviving COVID and now financial recession for a lot of people, that's not a small thing. And one thing we've been very blessed by is by not having a lot of debt. So we've been able to be very lean to be able to keep doing things when other companies would have to fold up because it's like, well, we have so much we have to pay. So goods and bads, but we've been able to stick with it and keep showing that we keep improving things and trying to grow and do new stuff. Well, thank you, Maggie. I'm glad you enjoyed it. If you suddenly exploded, you know people you could hire full time if that happened 3 years ago. Yeah. No, that's true. There is some people that I would immediately be like, hey, do you want to do this like full part time or like full time now? And that would be a really cool phase to be in, and will be a cool phase to be in for people, because it'll be. And you're right. And there's been some, despite having to go slower, we've run into certain things that I realized I didn't like, that we've been able to alter and change and improve. If I would have done certain things years ago, I don't know if I would have liked it as much. If I would have like gone full force and was handed like $50,000, like go build this now. It wouldn't be the same universe. And then you could make the argument, well, what if you waited another 2 years? At some point, whatever, you got to do something. But I I do see a benefit to some of this taking longer. Let's see, what are we doing here? I do this rectangular panel. You also have a steady community of people who can set the tone when, yeah, that's true. And that's something I've been very appreciative of, because otherwise, if I don't have a community, it's just me talking to myself. And I've done that. I've had it. I like where you just keep making announcements and you're like, I hope someone's reading this. And then sometimes there's people who are paying attention that don't always comment. And then all of a sudden they will, and you're like, whoa, I didn't even know this person was there. That's so cool. So there are people who lurk that are reading and consuming what you're saying. They're just not super vocal about it. So that's, if you only move forward with the people who are being vocal, or if you lean only on that, there's too many days where things are quiet. I have a stupid problem where it's, you know, too many quiet days, and you're like, oh no, it's happening again. We're back to zero. Nobody's here. And it's like, no, just chill out. Yeah, no, that would suck. And I've heard that several times now, that people who've won the lottery, which is phenomenal, right? It's great. It's like, yeah, I won the lottery, but then they didn't know how to handle it, and then they end up being in a worse spot than if they never won to begin with. And like, you don't want that to happen either. And I try to remember to be thankful of that when I'm praying and stuff. That, you know, if grateful for the small victories, and then just keep pushing and trying to get to where it'll be different down the road. And I know that for some people, like, they're not early adopters, right? So they're not going to get into a game that hasn't, from a new studio that's not proven, right? They're going to wait. They're going to wait and see what happens. And I get that. I totally get that. So I know that there's going to be people who will come by later and be like, oh, this game's been around for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. Oh, okay. That's an accomplishment. Like, now they got all this stuff. I don't have to sit around and wonder, like, are they going to, you know, they're going to do one release like on Kickstarter and then, like, that's it. Now I've got a dead game that I bought. Which you can still enjoy a game regardless of how many players there are, but some people that's their metric. And I do appreciate that, well, that you have been around and still commenting and everything and being part of stuff. And exactly, yeah, life comes in waves. It's not always fun. It's just how it is. It's only not fun necessarily because, like, you don't know the plan. You don't know what's going to happen. So, like, you're just, it's not happening in your timeline, and that's just not how things work. There's been a number of times, especially when I was younger, I'd be very frustrated when I was praying because you want to know what's going to happen. How it's just that's not how it works. In some ways, you think, well, it'd be easier if I knew, but you don't really know that because it hasn't happened. It might make things harder. then you have to face questions like, well, what happens if this takes 5 years before anything really big happens? Well, are you going to stick with it? Because there was a point when I was first getting into Revelations that like I gave myself permission, because this is before I started writing. Like, how long am I going to be okay doing this and seeing what happens? I think I gave myself 6 months at first, and then it became a year, and then it progressed to where it's like, well, I don't know, let's just keep going. And not because I don't know, but just more of like realizing with experience, you can't just say, at least in my experience, you can't just be like, I'm going to do this for 3 months. If nobody buys it, I'm done. Because it's like when you hit that 3-month mark, did you market it to the best of your ability? Did you genuinely, in my case, did you paint it? Did you promote it? Did you build other aspects around it that would interest people? Or did you just make a model or commission a model, like in my case, and then you put it out there on the internet and nobody bought it, and you didn't promote it, you didn't talk about it, and you didn't build more things, and you didn't do all this and that? And it's like, so you didn't really give it a good shot for those 3 months. So how can you, and 3 months is so tiny, or 6 months, even a year, it's not enough time to be able to see if anything's going to work. And I used to be a lot more of the mindset of like, it needs to be super fast. We need to see something happen. And it doesn't work that way, unfortunately. But again, I'm also not someone who's had instant success. If I was someone who did, I might have a totally different viewpoint of like, well, okay, we made $40,000 in our Kickstarter, so obviously this is going to have to make X amount in the next couple of months, or we have to reevaluate everything. And I've had to just instead do a lot of stuff just almost on sheer passion of like, well, if we want to do it, we got to kind of just keep going. It's just how it has to be. Yeah, let's do that. Well, yeah, man. You get those printers working. Well, and it'll make things even easier also, as we have some other stuff that's coming out that'll make it easier to print more of the components, and then also just continuing to make the game pre-supported and everything to make it easier for new players to get in faster, instead of waiting to, like, because they got to go and do all the supports themselves. There'll be people who still want to do that, and that's fine, but I think most people are getting to the mindset of they don't want to do the supports if they don't have to, which I get it. If I buy files, I'd much prefer them to be properly pre-supported than me having to go through and do it. Like, I don't want to do it. Granted, I do it enough on my own that, like, I don't want to do it if I don't have to. That is definitely a job that, like, once someone can take that from me, I don't want it back ever. But not all hats are fun to wear. Sometimes you just got to do it because it has to be done. Have you considered going to another con again? I remember you went to one way back. Yes, I want to. So like there's other actual big gaming conventions. Like the one I think you're talking about I did go to was local and it was so. I don't think anybody came of that bought the novels then. Like I don't think any of them are involved in the community at all. I've wanted to. This past year I was a bit concerned as we were coming fully out of COVID that there would be a spike and then they would have really strict guidelines. And then like, cause I'd have to cause down in Florida, like some of the bigger conventions are like, Indiana or Ohio, and such. So it's like, or Chicago. And it's like, they're so far away that to make that trip to then get there, to then be like, you got to go home because you're COVID positive, or we've got new guidelines where you have to be XYZ in order to get in, or it was just going to make things really difficult. So I just decided like, I can't put that money up and then not be sure I'm going to get to go. And then the second hurdle that we still have to overcome is just the expense of it. That one I can kind of overcome, but it's more of, we only have one vehicle in my family and I would want to drive because I'd want to take the product with me and I feel it'd be safer if I drove it versus flying it. I have considered maybe shipping it. That might be okay because I can pack it well. I've done that plenty of times. But if I wanted to take like stuff to be able to make as like a display, like my painted figures, I definitely want to drive those. I wouldn't want to trust the mail service or an airplane to not bust them. And you need proper displayed stuff. So then it's like, okay, well, if I'm driving, if we're renting a vehicle, now the expense is really big. And if we take the only vehicle, now I'm going to be gone for up to a week. So then it's like, well, what do we do here? So I want to, and I want to figure out a way around it. It's just been a challenge currently. And I would like to go to Adepticon. Whoa, I wanted to go this year. I considered just going just for me, just to meet some of the other people that are up there that would go, and kind of just gauge the industry, right? It didn't work out to make the best sense. Maybe next year. Next year might be able to actually swing it, which would be cool. That'd be very cool to be able to. Well, it's just about 11:30 here. Kind of got everything in a decent spot. I don't really want to break open another color at the moment. We'll kind of just leave things here. So thank you guys for being here tonight. I do genuinely appreciate it. I'm looking forward to Revicon, and I might end up announcing another painting stream in between now and then, mostly because I still have more stuff to paint. And it would give some other people an opportunity that couldn't be here tonight, maybe to be to that one. So either way, Revicon, don't miss it. All right. Have a good night, guys. Thank you very much. I'll talk to you guys later.